Welcome to 6 African Trade Talks, the show that brings you closer to the intra-Africa trade business world. I'm your host, Chad Chawanda. In this episode, our guest is Holger Vogt. Holger is the Managing Director for AMENA Africa. Holger, welcome to 6 African Trade Talks. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Before we start, we'd like to hear a word from our sponsors.
Advocado Africa is a pan-African digital marketing social enterprise. With the exponential growth in smartphone users in Africa, you have to take your marketing digital. Advocado can do that for you. Advocado, minding your business.
Holger, please tell us more about your professional journey.
My African journey, and that's, I think, where my professional journey started, was back in 2005, where I went to South Africa for a good year. And ever since, I would say, I've never left the continent, or the continent never left me. Back in 2012, I started consulting companies to do business on the continent. And in 2017, we started establishing AMENA Africa. And here we are.
Amazing. What is AMENA Africa?
So AMENA Africa is a pan-African market advisory firm. We mainly work with the private sector and support companies to access and do business and grow in African markets. We support companies in the value chain of a market entry, from the conception of their idea up to the actual business on the ground. And we work across the continent with 4 main hubs. One is in Nairobi, where I'm based. We're also registered in South Africa, in Nigeria, as well as in Ghana.
Amazing. You touch most parts of Africa, and advisory is quite an important role in terms of taking Africa forward. In your opinion, what are the market entry strategies for a startup in Africa? And do you need one?
Well, to answer the latter question, I would definitely say yes. You definitely need a strong strategy. And most importantly, you have to know which country you're targeting first. What we see a lot is, especially with startups, as they're quite creative and fast growing, they want to take on everything. But again, if you're not quite sure about a market, it's really important to first know why you want to access a market. I would usually advise to rather grow in one market first before you now tackle the others. When it comes to the question of what type of market entry strategy do you need, I believe there are multiple. It really depends on the individual case. So even in our profession, there's no one-fit-all policy or one-fit-all market entry strategy. It really depends on what your products are, how you as a firm operate, what's your company culture, and also how are you set up? Because there are certainly markets which some might think they're easier to access than others. But in the end of the day, most of them have similar entry barriers. And I usually advise to really do your homework before you actually start studying the market.
That's quite interesting. One would think that this one is easier than the other, but I guess that's also the reason why there is now the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because some of the challenges are similar. So thank you very much for sharing. Based on your travels across Africa, what would you say are the low-hanging fruits you have seen?
I think they're plentiful, but just to give you maybe a couple of ideas, especially when you think about young firms or let's say agile firms, it should be rather straightforward to really capitalize on what our markets here in Africa have to offer. Let's say if you have a bit of an international outlook and you see models working overseas, if you twist them and Africanize them or localize them, that is often, I believe, the most obvious low-hanging fruit, because we have challenges and they are often plentiful in most of our markets. But again, they're also simple challenges to an extent. So if you come with a concept to solve those challenges and adjust whatever has worked elsewhere and really localize it, I think that is probably the biggest opportunity. On the other hand, I believe a lot of our markets have not really been tapped fully. Right. So in a lot of areas, is it food and beverage? Is it agriculture? Is it logistics? I think we're just seeing the surface being serviced, right? There's a lot that is underneath the surface that we can still work on. And I believe if you have an open mind, and I think if you listen to what the market tells you, then I believe you're very much set off for a very successful and prosperous future.
Before we continue, we'd like to hear it from our sponsors.
Did you see that billboard? No, I didn't. I was looking at my phone. That's how billboard advertising is now ineffective. If you ever wondered how to employ people with disabilities, then by working with Advocado, you would have just done that. Advocado is a social enterprise focusing on using digital marketing to create employment for people of determination and young women across Africa. Let's do it together. If you want to make a difference, contact us now at www.advocado.africa.
Holger, what are the factors that may be driving the ongoing international mergers and acquisitions in Africa?
There are lots of reasons, but I think two reasons at the moment, given the current situation, stand out. The first reason, I believe, is African markets simply have a lot of great potential and a lot of great companies that have been working in the field for years. And I believe when you look where the money is coming from and also who is going for an acquisition or a merger, it's often companies from outside the continent or even some very well-established local firms. And I think the world is more or less waking up to realize what is possible on the continent. And I believe that is probably one of the key drivers for the current spike in M&As. On the other hand, what we saw, especially I think over the last 2 years with the pandemic and the world changing, and so now we have a full-on war in Europe again, I believe companies just have to look elsewhere. I think the proven concepts of the last century probably needs to be rewritten. And I believe we here on the continent are very much on the forefront of that change.
Certainly, we are here already. We've got the opportunity to lead. Can you share some reasons why it's necessary to do thorough research? Is it always necessary to have a local partner?
I'm a little bit biased because that is my core business. So of course I have to answer that it is very important to do thorough research. But I believe even if I would not be, let's say, one of the beneficiaries of it, and that's not just an African case, if you go into a new market, you have to really understand and read the local market environment. That is nothing that a textbook or any whatever business concept will teach you. You have to go taste and feel. And that is part of research. And I usually advise companies that if you want to enter a market and you're not really sure what you put yourself into or why you're even going into a market, and then also the question often arises with who are you going into the market, then you set yourself up for failure. A lot of firms believe that, we've done business across the globe. Why are African markets different? And then you touch ground and you realize, actually things are different. I mean, it starts with what an international firm might say, minor problems at the port. But I believe everyone who's been to an African port, is it going to be in Apapa in Lagos or Mombasa in Kenya, you realize things are simply handled differently. It doesn't mean that it is more difficult than elsewhere, but you have to understand, you have to read how the processes work. We have a very delicate system, I think, in a lot of African countries on how business works. And unless you understand and more importantly, accept it and then play by those rules, it will be very hard for you to really do meaningful business here. To focus on your second question about do you need a local partner? I think that very much depends on your business model. If you simply want to bring your products to the market, I would definitely advise for a strong partner. But also here, you have differences of what type of partner are you looking at. I mean, out of experience, when I fly to, let's say, Lagos and I tell someone what I'm doing, I would have 5 partners in the time span of 2 hours. Everyone says, I can do it, I wouldn't work with you, I've got experience, etc., etc. But once you actually start now visiting them and talking to them in a bit more depth, you realize they're not the actual partner you're looking for. So you need a partner, I think, to grow fast and to go long distance. If you're more on the, let's say, manufacturing level and you really want to establish some manufacturing facilities, there's always that option of working with a partner, because what you're buying into is knowledge, market understanding, and local talent. And for you as an international to build up that experience will take you a lot of time and you will spend a lot of money. So certainly a partner is a great option, but also I would like to say it really depends who you are partnering with. But in the end of the day, it's like, choosing your wife. I mean, you're not going to go for the first one that looks pretty. You're going for the one that you will be together until the rest of your life. So I think there are similarities when it comes to doing business on the continent.
Interesting. That is an answer packed with a lot of good insights there. Thank you very much. How can the AFCFTA assist with market entry for international organizations into Africa?
I think first and foremost, I see the AFTA an opportunity for our local markets to trade with each other. I think that should be at the core of the idea of the AFTA. Personally, I think there's still a very, very long way to make it really work. But I think if I look at it from an international perspective, it opens up more opportunities for me to service more markets from one certain location. So if I look at, let's say, Kenya as an example, we are pretty much well integrated into one of the trade blocks, which is the EAC, the East African Community. Now, if you look into a country like, let's say, Togo in West Africa, quite small, position next to, for their standards, giants. So let's say Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, they're already part of ECOWAS, but all of a sudden now for that country, also the other markets around it open up. And I think if you look at it from an international perspective, it makes your market entry in the long term a bit easier because you don't have to tackle every 54 countries individually. You can most likely select hubs. And from those hubs, you serve a region. So I think and I hope that the AFTA will really accelerate the growth for African markets, first of all, but also provide plentiful opportunities for international markets if they again understand the dynamics on how to trade and how to do business on the continent more effectively.
Any podcast or book recommendation?
Even though I'm on a podcast now, I have to say I have not yet migrated to listening a lot to podcasts, which I believe is due to the fact that my commute to work isn't as long. But when it comes to reading, I definitely read quite a lot. And I think one of the books that really influenced my decision to go the entrepreneurial route was a book by Robert Kiyosaki, which is called Why A Students Work for C Students and Why B Students Work for the Government. I'll let you decide who you believe I am, but I think it's quite obvious I'm rather on the lower side when it comes to performance. So I'm definitely a C student.
My business is growing. Thanks to Advocado Africa, digital marketing is the way to go. I get to know what my customers want and how they feel in real time. Besides, I choose how much to spend. I feel in control. If you want to take control of your marketing, contact Advocado Africa now. Visit www.advocadoafrica. Advocado Africa. We mind your business.
Africa is a continent full of potential, but potential means nothing if we don't take action to create value. Let us take action. Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to post and share this episode on your social media platforms. It will help us reach our mission of sharing knowledge about intra-Africa trade and making it available to as many people as possible. Let us grow our continent. We can go far, fast, together. If you can please leave a review on our podcast page or on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.